So this is gloating part, whatever. I just like gloating. So we know, all of you Luciferians and Satanists, that the royal family are the bloodline of Lucifer, and you should all be kissing the arse of Prince Charles and Wills, and well, I can't talk about lousy Louis and the harlot Charlotte and Gormless George, because going on YouTube and saying you should kiss their arse is not a good look. But obviously, this is the bloodline you're worshipping. These have all the power in the world. They simply rule the world, and of course, Wills, according to the People's Voice TV, is the Antichrist, and they have all the occult power in the world, and they're ruling the world. So, this is the question I posit. If this is the case, how come the UK press is releasing stuff like this? Can you explain it to me, Luciferians, with your bloodline that rules the world?
Royal Rota, because of your refusal to bow to the demands from Buckingham Palace and not report on what is really going on with King Charles's health. There is a divide, even amongst my audience, about whether we should be talking about this at all. You know, some people do sign up to the idea that actually King Charles has a complete right to privacy and dignity when it comes to his health. But you say this is really a tale as old as Shakespeare. You know, the health of the monarch and this type of transition is something which is very much in the public interest. And as a result, you have been reporting that there is really a swift movement going on. A swift shift of...
I do not like that language. Please do not use that name. It brings shudders up my spine. Thank God for the Pfizer Butslot, who's marrying the bitch.
Charles to Prince William and Catherine, and even Prince George, which we're seeing in lots of ways which again remain unspoken. So, Tom, firstly, what's your reaction to the new pictures of King Charles? I know you have been concerned about quite how bad his health is.
My honest reaction, Dan, is that he needs to abdicate and he needs to take some time for his own health, and that it's inhumane that he is being allowed to carry on. I don't think it's fair on him. I don't think it's fair on the country. The palace is involved in the most titanic gaslighting exercise. Everybody can see with their own eyes what is happening. Anyone who has two eyes in their head can see that Charles is losing weight, that he looks really weak, that he's struggling. If you talk to any of the press pack who follow him, the appearances now are like that. They are so quick. He's in and he's out. As I understand it, things have got a bit worse since the kind of late summer. Things were better earlier in the year, and he was showing up for longer and doing more things.
You would have thought, with the royal family's Queen Witch, Katy Perry, now being with the love of her life, Trudeau, that all of that power would have gone into the royal family to save them from the God Emperor, who's slowly and horrifically torturing Charlesy boy to death. Why? Because the God Emperor loves BDSM, and Charlesy boy is in my basement, and I'm using the old psychic flensing knives, blow torches, and a small version of Putin's Poseidon torpedo up his rectum, plus the School of America's electrodes on his soul, and of course sucked him into Omega Hell, built by the AI, which we explained, and what's left is a shell that I'm having as my demonstrator. Look what I can do to anyone I damn well please. And do you wish to follow in Charles's footsteps, the bloodline of Lucifer, with Wills and Harlot Charlotte and the lousy Louis, and what's the other one? Oh, Gormless George. And of course we've got Middleton Mark II, who got cancerized, and we've got the new version, the new plastic surgerized one. She of course was targeted by yours truly, and her boyfriend blew his brains out. That was the husband of the Duke of Kent, or Prince of whatever they fuckwit, head of the Freemasons, daughter's husband who blew his brains out, or was SAS, for bonking Middleton. So you can see how much fun they have torturing the bloodline of Lucifer. And the big question has got to be, you know, this lowlife Islamic sand nigger is torturing to death the bloodline of Lucifer. So, A, has Lucifer got no power, or B, has Lucifer made a bet with the God Emperor and lost it, and now, of course, the God Emperor's gloating, and more than gloating, he's actually torturing to death the King of England. Why? Because the God Emperor's a sadistic bastard, and he enjoys it. Remember, Wills got the MI6 head to promise I'd be done in, and now we've got the British deep state ditching the royal family and coming on side with yours truly. This is very bad news. As I say, we don't want the British deep state cozying up to me, because obviously then they'll be sending one of the women over to be in Hong Kong. And, you know, who's the British Nagwal woman? Any guesses?
Sheila.
The bald queen. Who needs to wire you up in a US alien facility when you got the bald queen next to you? Anyway, let's continue.
Time, and I think that if it was you or I who were in this situation, our doctor would call up our partners and they would say to them, look, this person needs rest and recuperation, they need to focus on their recovery, they need to be kept away from sources of stress, and that is the best chance for recovery in the long run. And I also think, by the way, that Charles, frankly, has made such a titanic mess up of his entire reign, and I feel very badly for him. I know he's waited his entire life to do this. He was handed, effectively, a beautiful china bowl when the Queen passed away, and within 3 years, the whole thing's in chaos. It's a complete mess. The handling of the Andrew situation has been disastrous. The handling of the Harry situation is going the same way.
So, here's an American patriot doing a 42-minute assassination of President Trump. This truly is. I listened to the whole video and went, what? He's got, well, let's listen to some snippets. We're not doing 42 minutes, but okay, we'll do a selection and you can listen to the whole lot.
From the beginning, he's always been not the common person that you see. He's doing things different than everybody else. He literally breaks the molds of how people operate, and he's been the disruptor. All those things have always been talked about as what makes Donald Trump who he is and why so many people have loved him. But what happens if that shtick, if that propensity is actually starting to deteriorate and we didn't even notice because we thought it was what he was doing on purpose? That is what we want to talk about today, because the ramifications for what could be in the process of unraveling at the moment could have significant implications for the national security of the United States. And things are a lot worse, I believe, than many people realize. And to try to help unpack a lot of this, we have absolutely delighted today to have on the show Dr. John Gartner, psychologist and former professor at Johns Hopkins University Medical School.
And as you well know, this must be a conspiracy theorist, because there is no Johns Hopkins University Medical School, is there? As I say, this is just conspiracy theory. As I say, does anyone know about Johns Hopkins University Medical School? I don't think so. Do you, Cameraman? Conspiracy theory. But this video is just one huge hit piece on Trump, and in fact it's an infomercial for psychic warfare.
Really, you've been kind of the pioneer on this issue here, even from Trump's first term. So we're delighted to have you on the show today. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it's a dubious distinction to be the pioneer, because I think that means you're the first one to hang.
Well, let's hope that we can avoid that last part, but you're definitely the first one that can alert the country of some issues here. And even before we get into what may be going on with some of this cognitive decline, I want to I ask you to kind of go down some of the detail of something I've seen you on a couple of other shows talk about, that there are really two here, and they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. And one is what you call the malignant narcissist, and then the other one is dementia. What are the differences between them?
Well, so malignant narcissism is a personality disorder. So Donald Trump has always been a malignant narcissist. And one of the things that people need to understand about that diagnosis, it's actually not in the DSM-3. It's actually a historic diagnosis, and I'm only really familiar with it because my mentor, Otto Kernberg, is one of the world's experts on it. It was introduced by Erich Fromm after World War II to explain the psychology of Hitler and other grandiose murderous dictators like him. In other words, Fromm was trying to describe a type of leader. And Fromm gave us all of these warnings about how destructive these leaders could be, and how their grandiosity and their murderous paranoia and their sadism would be inflamed when they gain power. And those are the four components: are narcissism, antisocial personality disorder, so that's frequent lying, breaking laws and norms. You talk about breaking molds. Yeah, well, if you break laws and norms, that's a mold of sorts. Exploiting other people and feeling no sense of, and violating their rights and feeling no sense of shame or guilt or fear about it. And then paranoia, and then finally sadism, that he really takes great pleasure in harming people and punishing his enemies and belittling people, and also in creating chaos and terror, which I think is part of what he's trying to do. So that's the baseline, which is really bad. But we're really in a perfect storm, because in addition to that, he has been evidencing signs of dementia now for many years. I've been writing about this. I wrote about this in a series of physicians and a group of op-eds in 2019. He's gotten way worse since then. And the problem is when people, of course, obviously, it's an immense danger to have a head of state who has dementia. But when someone has a personality disorder, it interacts with their dementia. So they become the worst version of themselves. All of their personality traits and disorders and problems become magnified and more erratic and less inhibited and more confusing and more disinhibited. So for example, we've noticed he's becoming more coarse in the way he's interacting with the press, saying, "Quiet, piggy." That to me looks like an example of disinhibition. And it's probably something in terms of, if we don't know for sure, but it's probably something in the area of frontotemporal dementia specifically, where we do see a lot of behavioral disinhibition.
Now, let's explain this to all the intelligence community. The Iranians have been targeting Donald Trump like mad. I warned you. They did in brave Netanyahu, one of the glowing leaders of the free world, and made him prostrate, or prostrateless, and heart attack. All of this is standard psychic warfare. If you read back, the Soviets did in the best US remote viewer and gave him a heart attack. And if you don't understand how, look at Kulagina, and who was the telepathic mistress of the Soviet Union, and she demonstrated she could stop the hearts of a frog, or to put it more correctly, she could stop the heart of a frog, and did the same thing on an interviewer before she killed him, just to demonstrate she could do this. So this has long been in the psychic warfare tool bag, and it's called by the Americans remote manipulation. Now, the Iranians have been attacking Trumpy Boy 24/7 with psychic warfare. It's not as if there isn't any information on psychic warfare. And yours truly has been giving out the most top secret psychic warfare modalities on his psychicwarfare.com, which now has to be behind a firewall thanks to EU legislation which would get dear old Mikey boy shipped off to the police station for a third time. But it was all on there, and of course we've had the Rumble and YouTube information. But what the intelligence community has to understand is that the Iranians have been attacking him 24/7 with teams of remote manipulators. And why destroy his temporal cortex? Quite easy. We've seen how to destroy cells. If you look at my information, you'll be able to see how you can use remote manipulation to destroy cells. But why target the temporal cortex? Well, we showed on my channel that left temporal cortex damage leads to telepathy. So, 50% of the Soviet psychic warfare program was telepathic hypnosis. So, if you destroy the temporal cortex of Trumpy Boy, specifically the left side, and this would then look like dementia, you then, of course, can use telepathic hypnosis to start to remotely influence Trumpy Boy and control him like an Obols. So we can see that the Iranians are remotely influencing after remotely manipulating and brain damaging poor Trumpy Boy, who of course couldn't get any psychic protection because of course the money isn't in attacking people. I just attacked Charlesy Boy and the royal family because they said they were the bloodline of Lucifer, and of course they said they weren't, and Lucifer's my bitch, so it's an existential threat to the royal family to come after me. So I'm simply destroying the royal family because they were the authors of the worldwide program to do me in to prove they were the bloodline of Lucifer. So the horrific torture and slow death of the royal family and their public humiliation with Andrew and Fergie is done by moi to prove that they aren't the bloodline of Lucifer, they're just grifters, con merchants, and a waste of money and space. So they asked for it, they got it. If you get into a zero-sum game with the God Emperor, then you're not going to make it out alive. But of course, before I do you in, I'm going to humiliate, torture you slowly and horribly. And now you can see why the British deep state has joined my side, because of course they're going, yeah, the royal family are about as worthless as a broken condom. If it wasn't that they were semenless, it would be totally worthless. So, we can see now that the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, is a torture victim of the Iranians. With the old School of Americas, you put electrodes up every orifice, so the Iranians are putting electrodes up every psychic orifice of Donald J. Trump. That's why he's got nappies and a catheter. They've been hammering the poor bastard, and I simply made sure he had no protection, thanks to Bezos and Amazon, who got the entire Amazon community to power my stilling of the entire US psychic warfare program that should be protecting him, but isn't. So this entire video is about the horrific damage the Iranians have done to Donald J. Trump.
In a way, really the perfect storm. The worst case scenario, we have a very sort of evil and an evil leader who is also losing his cognitive skills, who has no guardrails around him, right? They're firing all the people in the military, for example, all the lawyers who can tell them what an illegal order is, they just fired those people. And he has this enormous power, I think, overestimate. the risk to national security. And that's not even talking about the corruption and the Russia ties. Just in terms of having a head of state with that much power and that little restraint, who is essentially a malevolent actor and is really losing a grip on what's going on.
Now, this is a national security issue to the brave Israelis because, of course, we've got the Iranians controlling Donald J. Trump. So it doesn't matter if they got the Israel lobby. If the Iranians have brain damaged Donald J. Trump and are using telepathic hypnosis to move him away from what he should be doing, which is aiding the brave Israelis to destroy Iran and go nuclear on Iran, instead of which he's being diverted. Where is he being diverted to? Well, the war against Venezuela. And, of course, desperately trying to make a peace deal with the Russians, so the Russians can come to the aid of the Iranians to protect Iran against Israel and America. And they can't do that when they're locked into a war in Ukraine. So you can see the remote influencing on Donald J. Trump to attack Venezuela, and of course this new peace deal trying desperately to force the Ukrainians into a ceasefire with Russia so Russia can come to the aid of the Iranians, while brave Mossad and the Israelis are desperate to end the threat of the Iranians, who with nukes will wipe out Israel and probably Europe, and of course with a missile to drop on the Elon Musk gigafactory, wipe out North America and Mexico and Central America. So, as you can see, psychic warfare is in full play, and the Iranians have proven that they're getting better at this. Luckily, they've been watching my channels, but luckily, I'm not allowed to sell to Iranians or Russians. Can you imagine what they do with my services? So, this video is wonderful, and this doctor lays it out beautifully, but it's 42 odd minutes and we've got other places to go. But let's go to the end where we have the before and after of Donald Trump, which is, let's say, what did they say? A picture's worth 1,000 words.
Do you guys like doing this stuff? You know, they said, sir, it was the greatest day of our life. Can you believe this, Congressman? It was the great, I mean, they're like heroes. They're like American heroes. Who the hell wants to sit, you know, those ships are very big, but they're very small when you're up way high, going very fast. And he said it was the greatest day of our life. And they told me something that I didn't know. They said that, sir, do you know, we waited 22 years for this, our predecessors and us. We would practice this run for 22 years. I didn't know that. For 22 years, we had to practice. We'd do it 3 times a year. We would practice this exact run. And then when you canceled it, because I canceled when they heard that we were coming, we were devastated. I said, see, now if I were a flyer and they canceled, I'd be extremely happy. Well, we're canceled, so let's forget it. But we were devastated. So I said, this is something you really love, right? Yes, sir, we were so honored. This was the greatest day of our life. I mean, it's really great. We just have incredible people in this guy. It's an amazing story. And they hit, and then they said, skedaddle, the word skedaddle. And that plane went like this. You know, when it drops a bomb, it goes down very steeply because that gives it a better angle and, you know, more speed for the bomb. And very, very heavy bombs. And they go boom. And as soon as those things, the one pilot, the first one said, skedaddle. And that thing just turned in its side. And I mean, it's just so unbelievable.
Do you have any idea what he's talking about?
Skedaddle. I mean, I remember that from my
Skedaddle.
childhood, but
There you go.
I don't.
Skedaddle.
Yeah. What do you see from this?
Well, it's disorganized thought. You know, the thoughts, first of all, we don't know what he's talking about. We never really understand the context of what this incident is that he's trying to relay. The sentences don't even relate to each other. You have all these sentences where he just stops in the middle and then just starts another one and stops in the middle and starts another one where they don't even relate to each other. And then he just, well, it's skedaddle. As if that's the punchline. That's the whole, it's skedaddle, the word skedaddle. As if that's somehow the anecdote or the explanation or the punchline. It doesn't really make sense. It doesn't hold together. And, that's where it's useful actually to do what you just did, which is to play an extended clip. I think the press has really been doing us a disservice. They've kind of been hiding this in plain sight. I kind of like when they hid FDR was in a wheelchair for 4 years and we never knew because they were kind enough to only show him from above. It's like they're kind of showing us these clips, right, where he's saying something provocative or threatening, but they're not showing us the whole meandering, tangential thought process. And that's another sign of cognitive decline, when people become tangential, when they go off on tangents that don't relate to what they're talking about, or they go from topic to topic through a sort of chain of loose associations that don't actually make sense. The example I often give is, when he was lying and saying they're sending immigrants from insane asylums, the next thing he says is, anyone here seen Silence of the Lambs? Okay, so we're talking about immigrants coming from insane asylums. That reminds me of a movie about an insane asylum. Okay, that's a loose association. And then he goes, oh, the late, great Hannibal Lecter. No one likes to talk about him anymore. Okay, well, first of all, Hannibal Lecter is a fictional character, so he can't be dead. He can't be the late Hannibal Lecter. And then I always think it's funny that he thinks, people should be admiring him more, like he's some, admirable historical figure. Well, he's a serial killer who eats people, but I guess in Trump's psychology, that's kind of ego ideal he might admire, that he thinks people are praising enough. But in other words, it's that same kind of loose association where there is no connection. He just keeps veering off on side tangents.
And actually, I've got one more here from October in Japan, where President Trump was talking, and you'll see a lot on display here of both sentences just stopping in mid-sentence and going somewhere else, things that are not connected at all, and, well, here it is.
We do make the best weapons, but if you don't have the right people to operate those weapons, they don't mean much. Despite that, as Commander-in-Chief, I never forget that our ultimate strength does not come from equipment. It comes from the men and women of the rank and file. That's true. It comes from you people, incredible people, good-looking people, too many good-looking people. I don't like good-looking people. I never liked good-looking people, I'll be honest with you. I've never admitted that before. But see, I'm allowed to, we wanted the Supreme Court to think based on merit. You know about that, right? Merit. Everything now in our country is based on merit. And that's why I look at you and I see nothing but merit.
We actually used at the time he made that statement some of his comments about the military and being so strong and all that. Like you said, we just took out some bites here. But then this one here, kind of in the middle, you're talking about the manpower and how we rely on those. That's cool, that's great. But then all of a sudden it's about attractive people, and then there's the Supreme Court. I have no earthly idea what that's talking about. And then it just went on from there. What does that tell you?
It tells us a lot than what you just said. So yeah, he's on script and he's talking about how great the people in the military are. Then he goes on a tangent about how he hates good-looking people. Okay, now that's just a crazy tangent. But then the next thing he says doesn't relate even to that tangential thought. I never admitted that before, but I'm allowed to say that because I won in the Supreme Court. Wait, what? So okay, that does not compute. And then he goes, yeah, because we won on merit. Now the country is based on merit. So that doesn't relate to the Supreme Court, and nor does the first thing about because he won in the Supreme Court, he's allowed to say he doesn't like attractive people. I think he had that in the First Amendment, to begin with. I don't think he had to go to the Supreme Court, but as he's talking about his immunity, you just don't know. But it's clear that these thoughts are disordered, discombobulated, don't relate to each other, and it's like the emperor has no brain. And it's all on display, and yet no one is calling it out.
And so I want to then go. So it's one thing if it's a speech. It's one thing.
No, that's wrong. The emperor has an Iranian brain. So, all of these Jewish billionaires are spending billions, but they haven't realized that they are now worthless, and the world is controlled by psychic warfare. And of course, the President of the United States is totally controlled by Iran, and the Iranian psychic warfare program. And you can listen to the rest of this wonderful video. You and the CIA and NSA and Mossad, and of course MI6, etc. already have listened to this, so that's why they're vivisecting the royal family, because of course MI6 have worked out, yeah, we need the bastards, so we better fuck over the royal family. And of course, who are they going to send? So there's the bald queen, and she's been given, we'll make you a film star, we'll do anything for you. And of course she's been visiting the United States. So we've got her back in the States. I think that's the States. I'm trying to look for where she is, but I think that's in the States. So obviously all the doors are open to the Borg Queen, because of course she's the output for yours truly. And of course, unlike the other Nagwal woman, she isn't a death engine, because the other Nagwal woman, Taylor Swift, is a Christian Zionist, and she is just broadcasting Charlie Kirkdom to the entire Christian Zionist world. So we don't even need to get her married to the Pfizer Butler. Yours truly is using her to Charlie Kirk the entire West, and of course all of the Christians in the world, in Africa and other countries. And you see now that Taylor Swift is the reason for the Ukraine-Russia war, because here we've got Christians killing Christians on a mammoth scale. 1.8 million Christian Ukrainians dead, and 150,000 Russian Christians dead, and soon we'll have the full-scale war between Russia and the West, with Europe declaring war on Russia 2026 or 2028. All because of Taylor Swift, who's broadcasting Charlie Kirkdom, that's death, to the entire Christian world. But of course, Jewish not a Christian. What religion's Jew, cameraman?
She's one of your lot.
One of my lot. Exactly. We give you free haircuts. So as you can see, Jew is no good for killing off the Christian world. In fact, if anything, all of her offspring that will be Nagwals, because she's a Nagwal and I'm a Nagwal, will in fact not be Charlie Kirking, which is a bit of a disaster, because let's remember, the only good Christian is a Charlie Kirk. Christian presenting me on a plate all this new material.